Hey y'all, so before I get this video started, let me give a quick shout out. These were the first 3 comments in my last video. If you want to be featured in my next video, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell and come show me some love when I drop a new video. What's up, you guys? It's KeAmber Vaughn, aka CoachKe, coming back to you with another video. If you are new to my channel, welcome. And if you're not new, welcome back. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and also tap the bell so that you are notified of every new video that I post. So as you guys can tell by the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about how I cured my PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, on my own. Now, this video was highly requested per a Facebook post that I made a little over a month ago when I found out that I completely healed and cured myself. Now, in this video, not only am I going to give you guys the supplements that I take that has helped me to basically completely get rid of my PCOS, but I'm also going to give you guys a brief history of my PCOS, kind of how I found out, what symptoms I had. I'll also give you guys the ultrasound results that I got 2 years ago, as well as the ultrasound results, the follow-up that I just got about a month ago. The reason why I want to give you guys kind of the history is because it's important to understand the history, what symptoms I was having, so that you understand why I chose the supplements that I have. One of the things that you also have to remember is that every person is different. Some people's symptoms might be different from others, but in general, PCOS is just basically when you have multiple cysts or even just one cyst on your ovaries. Okay, now of course I am not a doctor. I'm actually a nurse, but I'm not a doctor. Anything I say in this video, all I am basically telling you is what I did. I cannot say for sure whether it's going to work for you or not. I'm just telling you what I did and what worked for me. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So of course you may see me looking down from time to time because of course I have notes, because there's a lot of information that we need to get through in a very short period of time. So first, basically how I found out that I had PCOS, I started my cycles at 10 years old in the 6th grade. And although they weren't painful or anything like that, I never really had to worry much about cramping and stuff, except maybe like if I used like a tampon on the very first day. Outside of that, I really didn't have any cramping whatsoever. My biggest issue was the fact that I was not having enough cycles. I was only having about 7 or 8 cycles a year, which of course normal is 12. Now, at the time when I was going to the nurse practitioner, which we had a doctor in the office, but I just always went to the nurse practitioner, don't know why. She basically contributed to the fact that I was very aggressive in sports. Like I played a lot of well, not a lot of sports, but I played so much basketball that she felt like that contributed to it. And also the fact that I was underweight. I was underweight for a very long time. You guys can see I'm still pretty small. I'm 5'10", like 160 to 165 pounds. And the only reason I've gained these 20 pounds since high school is because I purposely did it. I literally had to eat like 4,000 calories a day for like 3 months, like some years ago, in order to get this little bit of extra weight that I have on me. So she just felt like that was the reason. There was never a thought process of maybe it's hormonal imbalances. There was like literally none of that. So fast forward to 2007, I graduated high school, and in my first year of college, I was still playing ball. I actually played ball like my first 3 years. But in that freshman year of college, I remember there was a time where we were in practice and I almost fell because my leg just completely went numb on me. And so I really didn't think anything of it. I've had different back injuries and knee injuries and everything, and I just felt like, you know what, maybe something is just going out right now. You know, I never really thought anything about it. Well, after a couple of days, like, I remember back then I was in medical assisting school because that was the only thing medical that they had back at that particular school. And because of the type of programs that it was there, and it was an accelerated school, most of our classes were like 2 to 3 hours long. And it got to a point where I couldn't even sit down in class. Like I had to stand up to take notes, stand up to take tests, because whenever I would sit down for a period of time, my leg would go numb. I would get like this really intense pain, kind of like in the fold that you have between your stomach and your legs, like right in your hips. It was excruciating. So eventually my coach told me, listen, you need to go back home, figure out where this pain is coming from, because I can't have you in a basketball game, you know, a competitive basketball game, you're just falling on the ground because you can't feel your legs. So I ended up driving back home, and I remember going to the doctor. She did a pelvic a pelvic exam, not an ultrasound yet. She did the pelvic exam, you know, where they put the two fingers in, they kind of like push on your belly. And I remember it being so painful when she was kind of like in those places of where my ovaries were. So she basically thought that I would have some kind of cyst on my ovaries. So from there, she wrote the script for me to get the ultrasound done. I remember getting the ultrasound done and her basically telling me that I had PCOS. She told me that my ovaries had essentially been destroying themselves since I hit puberty, which was at 10 years old. So by this time, I've already had 7 years of this happening. And she told me that if I didn't get on birth control, I would likely be infertile by my early 20s. So that was like a lot to take in. First of all, at 17 years old, and just for all of that to come in at one time, it was kind of devastating. She also told me that, like, instead of my ovaries being like this smooth, like egg-like surface, my ovaries, and if I can remember to post like a picture in here, I will insert a picture. It's like those little jelly balls that kids play with, where it's like the silicone, but then it has like these hair-like silicone follicles coming out of it all everywhere. Basically, that's what my ovary looked like. The silicone jelly part was what my ovary looked like, and I had all these follicles coming out of it, and at any point in time, those follicles would grow, cyst, and burst, and grow, cyst, and burst. And of course, the growing and bursting part was also contributing to my ovaries destroying themselves. Needless to say, I went ahead and I got on birth control, but only for a year. After that year, I was just like, I don't want to do this. You know, back then, all of the birth control pills and everything, I can't say all for sure because I only took one, but I'm pretty sure the majority, if not all of birth control back then, had a lot of hormones in it. Not only was I afraid of some of the side effects like stroke and just different things like that, but I was also very highly intelligent. Well, I am still at this point in time. But, you know, I was just thinking about the fact that if I continue to introduce this artificial hormone into my body, by the time I'm ready to have kids, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, is my body going to forget to produce the hormone on its own because I have this artificial stuff pumping through me? And if it does forget to produce it on its own now, what is the likelihood of my body starting to regenerate and start producing the hormone on its own again? Is this going to cause me to be infertile? Because that does have the likelihood of happening. That is a side effect for some people. So needless to say, I just decided I'm going to try my luck. I'm not taking birth control past this. It's over and done with at this point. Fast forward to 2013. I remember having an abnormal pap smear. And the second one that I had that was abnormal, she told me that it was basically worse than the previous one. She told me she could not tell if it was cancerous or precancerous or not. And she wanted to basically do preventative measures to take off the top layer of my cervix, which is called a LEEP procedure. Now, at the time, she scared the shit out of me. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. It was mainly because I had a close cousin, well, a cousin that's very close on the family tree, but I'm not going to say how close. But this individual was diagnosed with cervical cancer at a very young age, like in her 30s. So I was very afraid that that would happen to me. So when she told me, oh, this can turn into this and this and that, I was like, look, whatever you got to do, take it off. Do what you got to do. Just leave me enough so that I can have a baby. That's all I cared about. So went through the surgery and I ended up having complications. I was still bleeding after the surgery. And I'll probably do a story time on it because it's a whole big thing. It was very scary. I ended up hemorrhaging. Thankfully, not enough for me to need a blood transfusion, but enough where doctors and PAs were coming in like we never seen this before. And it was a very scary situation. So after the LEEP procedure, I was having a lot of issues with bleeding during sex, bleeding between my cycles. It was like a nightmare. I remember the first time I had sex after my LEEP procedure, which it was months later, it looked like a murder scene. It was the most horrendous thing I've ever seen in my life. And it was just, it's crazy. It's embarrassing. You know, it makes it to where no matter how much of an adult you want to be, you know, it's so embarrassing that you just feel like, you know what, I'll just go without for a very, very, very long time if I have to, even if I'm in a relationship. And then it makes it to where it's hard for you to be in a relationship because, you know, you're scared that you're going to bleed every time. And not only was I bleeding during sex, but after I start bleeding during sex, I would bleed up until my next period. So let's say I had sex like 2 days after I just came off of my cycle, I would literally bleed all the way until my cycle. Yeah, not fun. So I remember one of the follow-ups that I got after the surgery, she did tell me, oh, you're still bleeding from your cervix. You know, don't worry about it. Just give it time to heal. I didn't know if I ended up developing scar tissue or anything, but the previous surgeries that I've had ACL reconstruction. Actually, I had 2 of them. And then I also had the LEAP procedure. I didn't know if, because of the scar tissue that it like runs in my family, developing that after surgeries, I didn't know if maybe that was the cause of it. But when I went to get a second follow-up, and I can't remember how much time went in between, she literally told me, I don't know why you're still bleeding during sex. I don't know why you're still bleeding between cycles, because the bleeding is not coming from your cervix anymore. I'm like, well, where the hell is it coming from then? And she couldn't figure it out. So by this time of her telling me that she couldn't figure out where I was bleeding from, I would probably say this was around the end of 2016 by this point. So I had already had the LEAP procedure for 3 years, and I've been having these same symptoms for 3 years at this point. Now, as far as the symptoms of my PCOS and kind of what the hormonal imbalance was causing for me personally, not only was I having irregular periods, not only was I also having spotting in between periods and bleeding during sex, I also was having frequent UTIs. And when I tell you guys the results of my first ultrasound, well, not the first one, but the one that I had 2 years ago, you'll understand why. I also was having like frequent like vaginitis or bacterial vaginosis, BV, or yeast infections. Just basically, there was always some kind of pH imbalance that was causing me to have an infection. And to be honest with you, I feel like that was contributing to the overgrowth of cells on my cervix. Because when I got the biopsy, nothing ever came back abnormal. I think it was just because my pH balance was always just all over the place because of the hormonal imbalance. It just was causing a lot of stuff up there that just was crazy. And when I read y'all these ultrasound results, you'll understand exactly what I mean. Now, another thing that I do feel like was starting to contribute to things getting a little bit better was the fact that about 6 years ago, so around 2000, was it 6 years ago? Maybe it was 5 years ago, because I think it was around like 2014. I did start going to a chiropractor, a holistic chiropractor. I do not believe all chiropractors are created equal. Okay, I went to a holistic chiropractor, and the thing is, even though I'm a nurse, a lot of people have this misconception that anybody that's in the medical field, we're just like hoorah when it comes to Western medicine, and we just believe everything a doctor tells us. If they prescribe something, we just take it. I'm not that person. I personally prefer holistic and natural ways of healing versus medications. That's just me personally. But when I started going to the chiropractor, one of the things that I learned in them doing an x-ray was that not only did I have scoliosis at the top of my back, but once my back comes back to the center, it turns into a spiral. So the portion of my vertebrae that should be facing my back is kind of facing like over here. Now, the reason why spinal alignment is so important is because in between your vertebrae, you have nerves that are going out to all of your organs in your body, whether it is your lungs, whether it's your heart, your pancreas, your uterus, your ovaries, your testes, or whatever. You have this nerve supply, right? So if your spine is out of alignment and it's pinching different nerves, and it might not pinch it to the point where it's causing back pain, it could still be pinching a nerve or cutting off the oxygen or blood supply or nerve supply to those organs. And when that happens, it causes your organs to start acting different. For instance, with my dad is like 5'11". He might be 190, 195. He's not a big guy at all. He didn't really eat very bad and stuff. And one of the things that he developed was diabetes. Now, part of it really was his diet, but even as we started to fix his diet, there were just still different things that just didn't make sense. After he started going to the chiropractor and getting adjusted on a weekly basis, his A1C started to come down. His glucose levels started to come down as well. And I don't even know if he even has to take metformin or anything anymore. If he does, it's probably like a small portion of a pill just to make himself feel good about it. But I remember at one point he came to me to take his blood sugar, and it was like 65 or something, or 70. And he was like, oh my God. But he had been running so high, he didn't remember what normal felt like. And the reason why his diabetes, a big portion of it was like that, is because his nerve supply to his pancreas, which produces insulin, that was basically cut off. And so he was not able to produce the insulin he needed to keep his glucose levels down. So do understand that maybe a portion of your problem could be spinal malalignment, and that was definitely my problem, because as I was starting to get adjusted on a weekly basis and sometimes 2 days a week, I was starting to notice changes. It's just the subtle changes as time went on wasn't enough to completely heal me. But my cycle started getting shorter. It started getting closer to being normal. It just never completely normalized, basically. All right, so let's get into the ultrasound results, and then I'm going to go through the 3 supplements that I take. Now, if you guys are new to my channel, typically I don't put videos like this out on my channel. I typically talk about like budgeting and finance and investing. So in true KeAmber fashion, when I show you guys these supplements, I just want you guys to know that it is not expensive to maintain whatsoever. Anything on my channel probably ain't expensive. It literally takes me less than like $75 to $80 a month to maintain these supplements. It's very inexpensive in my opinion when you compare it to, you know, what you would have to do and put into your body if you had something that's prescribed by a doctor. So that's that soapbox. And I will leave down in the description box, and also I'll try to pin a comment with the Amazon links for these supplements. Okay, so the first results was from June 15th of 2017. And understand, when I got this ultrasound done, I had no idea what the results were. I literally did not get these printed out until I just got my follow-up July 19th of 2019. And I'll tell you guys why in a second. So basically back in 2017, I had a small but abnormal amount of fluid in the cul-de-sac of the pelvis. I had complex abnormalities present on each of my ovaries. It says the etiology of the enlarged irregular adnexa is not clear. So one or both? No, one of my ovaries was enlarged and they couldn't figure out why. It said I didn't have any nodules or intrauterine fluid. And I also didn't have, basically I wasn't pregnant. Now, not only did I have this abnormal amount of fluid in my pelvis, it says that the fluid contained debris, and it says the findings are greater than physiologic. It also says that the debris is consistent with an abnormal finding. Not only did they find multiple cysts, they also found a fibroid, and I remember them telling me that it was complex masses that they couldn't figure out, like if it was fluid filled, if it was filled with blood. It could have also been one of those cysts that's filled with like hair and teeth. It's like weird. Go look it up. Look, just don't eat before you do it. And also, I did not know this, but my uterus was enlarged, and I'll tell you guys by how much when I read you guys the new results. And also, I had endometriosis and had no idea. Now, the reason why I didn't know the exact findings is because I remember being on the table. At the time, I was 26 years old, so I was still pretty young. And even though I'm a nurse, I was and I still am, there are certain things that still scare me when it comes to my health. I'm human. You know, I've seen a lot, but at the end of the day, it's different when it comes to it being your body. Now, I remember laying there, and she basically was telling me, like, listen, you have a lot of masses everywhere. And I was like, masses? You know, it caught me by surprise. I didn't think that it was that bad. And I remember asking her, like, could they be cancerous? Like, and she was like, well, I can't say for sure, of course, because you would need biopsies done, but anytime you see masses, they could possibly be cancerous. And it really scared me because cancer runs in my family rampant. I told you about my cousin who had cervical cancer in her 30s. I also have had multiple family members die of lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, breast cancer. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. Or even some of them who didn't die from cancer, but still, you know, had to live through that and stuff like that. And so when she told me that, I literally freaked out, and I just remember leaving without even getting my results. And I was just like, you know what? I got to figure this out. I also remember my doctor or nurse practitioner, and this is not the same one from when I was 17 years old, but I remember her wanting me to do a follow-up ultrasound like 2 weeks later. And I'm like, for what? Like, I know nothing has changed because I haven't done anything different yet. So I just told her, listen, I will call you when I'm ready to do an ultrasound, a follow-up. And that was July of this year. So I started to feel like after all of the things that I have been doing, diet changes, which I'll get into that, fasting, and also the supplements, I started to feel like I was becoming normal. Eventually, I got to the point where, as of now, my cycles are so normal that in my little app that I use the Flow app. When it says I'm coming on, I'm coming on. And it's typically a 30-day cycle. I have no problems. I barely even have cramps. Like, the little bit that I have is like, ooh, that hurt. And it typically only lasts for like maybe the first hour. And I'm absolutely good after that. I don't have any more spotting in between cycles or anything, you guys. I'm literally completely normal. So as far as my follow-up ultrasound that I just got in July of this year, 2019, depending on when you're watching this video, basically my ovaries were now normal in size, as well as my uterus. My uterus, you guys, 2 years ago was enlarged by 33%. And I know that it's partially due to my hormonal imbalance. And also that abnormality in my uterus was what was contributing to the frequent UTIs that I was getting. I remember back then, like, whenever I had to use the bathroom, I never had the urge. And when I finally got the urge, when I sat down and used the bathroom, it was like a freaking waterfall. And I'm just like, I kept telling myself, I felt like my uterus was too big or something, like there had to be something in the way. And this basically let me know. And basically the only thing that it says is that I still have a very small free pelvic fluid amount, but it's probably physiologic in nature and just normal for me. And I do have a small uterine fibroid. The lady who did my ultrasound back in July, she actually did my ultrasound 2 years ago as well. And, you know, we were talking and she basically told me that this 14 millimeter uterine fibroid was the same one that was there 2 years ago. It has not changed in size, has not gotten bigger or smaller. And, you know, it's just probably something that I might have for a while. Who knows? So that was a huge difference, you guys, going from all of this free fluid debris and cysts everywhere and these masses that they didn't know what the etiology of them were. My uterus was enlarged, and the endometriosis. I had no idea I basically had endometriosis. My endometrium was too thick, and I had no idea. So a lot of this explained why when I went back to the doctor that one time, she said I wasn't bleeding from my cervix after sex. It was probably coming from inside of my uterus because I had all of this crap going on and I had no idea it was as bad as it was. So now let's talk about what I did to get to this point. The first thing that I did, and I did this before I even started supplements, was I cut out chicken because I had already stopped eating pork like 9 years ago now. No, 10 years ago now. I stopped eating beef like those first 2 years. I stopped eating pork, but then I reintroduced it, but I would only eat it every now and then, not very often. But I kind of figured that chicken was probably the culprit just because of, I don't know, I just feel like even when you get hormone-free stuff, you have to understand that the animals still had their own hormones, regardless if it was pumped with artificial or not. That stuff really just isn't good for us over time. And I'm not a vegan by any means. But I noticed that after I started to cut out chicken, like before I got to this point of supplements, I did notice that I was spotting less in between my cycles. And it would be something where, let's say this time I didn't spot at all during my cycle. And the next cycle, you know, after I come on my cycle and go off, let's say I might eat some chicken, right? And like within 24, sometimes 12 hours, I would spot. It was that bad. And it didn't matter if I got range-free, hormone-free, that did not matter. So I got to the point at first where like for about maybe 3, 4, 5 months, I was not eating chicken at all. And then past that, it was just like, well, if I'm going to eat chicken, I'm going to just eat it while I'm already bleeding, because you can't spot if you're already bleeding, basically. So even now, I don't eat chicken a lot. I do still consume it from time to time, but I don't eat it a lot. The second thing that I noticed that was starting to help me was intermittent fasting, which I still do to this day. And again, Google is your best friend. But basically with intermittent fasting, you typically eat for either an 8 or a 10-hour time frame. And then those other 14 to 16 hours of the day, you just drink fluids, particularly water, if you want to be the healthiest. And so I started doing that actually maybe like 2.5 years ago. No, it was about 2 years ago. I think it was right after I got those ultrasound results. My friend, who's like a health buff and a fit guy, he was telling me about it, and he was like, you know, maybe this could help you with some of the problems you're having. So I tried it, and the biggest thing is with PCOS, and I think everyone should intermittent fast because I just think that it's a very healthy thing for you, because when you're eating all throughout the day, and I won't make this a big thing in this video, your glucose levels and your insulin levels are being spiked and going up and down all day, right? And so that can cause an issue. So if you shorten your eating time frame in 8 or 10 hours, your insulin and your glucose levels are not going all over the place. It's in a very short window of time. One of the symptoms of PCOS that a lot of women deal with is insulin resistance, which leads to, of course, obesity and also diabetes. That's why a lot of times they start to put you on metformin kind of early and different things like that. So I started doing that. For me, typically I fast and then I eat between like 5 p.m. and 1 a.m. or 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. And that's just because when I do work, I work overnight. When I don't work, I'm still up literally typically till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's like the best time for me to eat personally. When it comes to my dieting, I basically like Monday through Thursday or Sunday through Thursday, I typically eat pretty healthy. I don't really eat a lot of meat. I might consume like salmon or some kind of fish or something like that during the week, and vegetables and fruit and like watermelon juices and stuff like that. Ones that I make myself, not that I like buy that's full of a bunch of sugar. And then on the weekends, I kind of just eat whatever I want. The other thing that definitely helped was cutting out a lot of dairy. I typically do not consume dairy except on the weekends, and still, like besides that, I still don't consume a lot of it. I don't really consume a whole lot of pastas and breads either. I literally don't even buy bread. When I do buy pasta, it's typically like a zucchini pasta or something, or I spiralize my own zucchini. I don't really eat a whole lot of things that turn into sugar, because guess what? That's part of the problem that leads to diabetes, and with your PCOS, that kind of heightens that already. I also continue my chiropractor visits. I don't go as often as I should, but I still go, and that definitely helps to maintain my back, because regardless of what I'm putting into my body that's good, I still have to make sure that structurally my body is good so that that nerve supply stays very healthy. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the supplements. So the first supplement that I introduced into my regimen was in January of 2018. So I've basically been on this supplement for about a year and 7 months. And this is called Nature's Plus EFM. I stumbled upon this on a humbug. I do now buy all of these on Amazon. Again, I'll put the links down in the description box as well as in a pinned comment right below this video. I went to a health food store close to my house, and I basically walked in telling her that I was looking for something that could help me with balancing my hormones because I had PCOS. I actually, before I started taking this, for about a year, I was taking a different supplement, and I promise you guys, I cannot remember what it's named. I remember I used to get it from GNC, but I can't remember the name of it. If I remember it, I'll put it across the screen. But it was helping for a while, but then I just felt like it wasn't enough. Like that one thing wasn't enough. So she introduced me to this, and it says Natural Hormonal Balance and Boost of Youth. And essentially what this is, it says it's a natural formula infused with the essential nutrients that will stimulate and balance your personal body chemistry for a more youthful and vibrant you. The thing I love about this is that it is all natural. There are no hormones in it, which was the most important thing, because I told you guys that was the big reason why I didn't want to take birth control. And I believe that what I used to take is it in here? I thought it was in here. That's what it was. I used to take maca root supplements, like the pill form. And I felt like over time it was enough, but there's maca in here. And so she basically explained that this helps to where it balances you out to where, like, let's say you have too much hormones, it brings you down. And if you have too little, it brings you up. It's like a holistic natural supplement. So that's what I started taking in January. I was noticing a huge difference. Again, my cycle started shortening to where it was no longer like 50, 55 days. It was starting to shorten already, and it started getting even shorter. And a lot of the bleeding problems that I was having was starting to subside, but it wasn't all the way there. So next thing you know, in June, so about 6 months later, I started taking a prenatal vitamin. Now, this prenatal I know you can find in Walmart, but again, I order off Amazon because I like to save money. So this one is the Nature Made Prenatal Multi Plus DHA. If you are someone who's not trying to get pregnant and you're afraid of like the DHA part, I believe they have this same vitamin without the DHA in it. Now there's a lot of stuff going around like saying, oh, well, if you take prenatals and you're not trying to get pregnant, you can get toxicity from this and that and this and that. There's research that supports it. There's research that doesn't. I can tell you guys, as a nurse, I've had clients, male clients, who we give prenatals to. Just saying. But part of the reason why I started taking this is because I started to feel like maybe some of my bleeding problems was because I was anemic, because I do have a history of that. And at one point it was so bad that it was causing heart problems for me as I was playing sports. So I was like, you know what, do I want to just take an iron supplement, or do I feel like a multivitamin would be better? I felt like a multivitamin would be better, and prenatals are typically the best multivitamins that you can find and that you have. So this one does contain fish in it, so if you're vegan, of course you can't take this one. I don't know about any other good prenatal vitamins that are as effective as this one. I just know this one works. So again, I started to notice that when I was bleeding, like in between my cycles and stuff, after starting the prenatals as well as having the EFEM with it, I was noticing that the bleeding wasn't as heavy. It was less red. It was more like the older looking color, if that makes sense. It wasn't like bright red blood and stuff like that. So that combination was working really well as far as that portion of it. But then I told you guys I was getting frequent like infections, like yeast infections and like pH imbalance and stuff like that. So what I decided to do was I started looking for a probiotic. Now, I think that everyone should take probiotics just anyway, because it's really good for like your gut health and stuff like that. And also it keeps a lot of bacteria away that you shouldn't have in your body. So I decided, you know what, let me look for one that's specifically not just for like overall probiotics, but if I can find one that also helps with like targeting the vaginal area, I think that would be good, because it would help to keep my pH level balance. Because again, like I told you guys earlier, I felt like that was part of the reason why I had to have that LEAP procedure and I had this overgrowth of cells, because I keep getting all these infections and they're not going away. They are going away, then they come back. They're not. It was just all over the place. So this one that I take is the Renew Life Women's Complete Ultimate Flora Probiotic. It's the 90 billion live cultures guaranteed, 12 probiotic strains. So with these, this is 2 pills per day, right? This prenatal is 1 pill a day, and this one is 1 pill a day. I believe this supplement I typically get for about $34 a month. This one I think is only like maybe $20 for 115 days. So like, what is that? Almost 4 months. And then this probiotic, sometimes I buy the bottle that has 60 pills in it. Other times I just buy the 30. It just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. But this one is, I think, like maybe $40 to $45. Sometimes you can catch it as low as $35, and that's typically when I buy 2 at a time. But that's literally my regimen. Typically, I will take these like with the first meal that I have after fasting, or sometimes even like before I even start eating, I'll just take these on an empty stomach, because sometimes I feel like it helps to absorb better. And these don't make me nauseous or anything like some supplements do if I take them on an empty stomach. And that's literally it. So I started taking these in January of last year, the prenatal in June of last year, and this one I started like in October of last year. So I'm coming up on a year. I have not had any more yeast infections, BV, vaginitis, nothing, like nothing after I started taking this. Now, I don't know if you necessarily need 90 billion. I was just being very proactive in getting 90 billion. They have like 15, I think 25, 30, 45, 50, and then I think it hops up to 90 if I'm not mistaken. So that's that, you guys. Those are the supplements that I'm taking, and I love the regimen. It's not harsh on my body whatsoever. Clearly, it worked for me, and I do, like I said, believe that the intermittent fasting, as well as, you know, not really consuming dairy throughout the week, Sunday through Thursday, not really consuming a lot of meat. I believe that some things are just good in moderation, and at the end of the day, you have one life. You definitely want to enjoy it. I don't want to be one of those like super uptight people where I'm not enjoying food because I'm worried about everything. That's why 5 days out of the week I eat pretty freaking healthy. Then the other 2 days I still typically, like I said, eat healthy. It's just not as healthy. You know, I might have a burger here and some beef ribs over here, but nothing too crazy. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was informational. I know it probably was pretty long, but it's a lot of information, and I hope you guys enjoyed the story that I told you, as well as how I, you know, found out and everything. Feel free to leave down in the comment section your PCOS story. If you start to try these supplements, of course, come back to the video and update me and let me know how it's working out for you. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Please thumbs up this video, subscribe if you haven't already, but other than that, I will see you guys in the next video.